Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Urban Scope podcast. Today, we have a very hip hop laden episode for you. Some hip hop mixed in with some entertainment type news. Thanks for the continued support. Don't forget to like and subscribe and watch the content. We're dropping more episodes more frequently now, so there'll be way more content coming down the road more frequently. So be on the lookout for the new content. So I'll first start off with the Ice Cube news, entertainment news from Ice Cube, rather, because he does work on films and he is still a hip hop artist at the same time as well. But as far as entertainment news, he was on Cam Newton's Funky Friday podcast, and they discussed the Friday series movies that's been dormant for some time. Ice Cube openly discussed his frustrations with the process of trying to get the fourth installment of the Friday series in production or just get the script approved. And he talked about that with Cam Newton. He talked about how the different reasonings for why the studios are not approving the script. So I know most people will say, well, he has enough money. Why don't he just film the movie himself or fund it himself? It's certain obligations that he has, because when he did the first Friday, he was unable to, he didn't have that kind of funding back then. So I think he went through a studio. He didn't have Cube Vision back then, which is his studio or his film company. So he was contractually obligated to go through the studio. So that's the problem he's having now. But he kind of gave us insight into the script that was rejected. And he's still in the process of now trying to get it approved still. And he also, voiced his frustrations of not being able to get the movie approved before he was, before John Witherspoon, who played his dad in the movie, passed away, and he wanted to do it before then, but he was unfortunately unable to do so. But the script that he said that got shot down was, he said, him and Day Day, which is Mike Epps' character, they owned a dispensary, and there was a flash mob that came in and they beat up one of the guys and they got sentenced to jail. But when they were in jail, they had to avoid previous villains from the previous episodes. So Debo from the first movie, who passed away, rest in peace to Tony Lister, the Joker brothers from the second movie, and then, of course, Terry Crews, who was Damon in the third film. So the studio turned that script down because they didn't think it would be a good idea to have filmed the movie from a correctional facility, because the movie is based upon hangout culture, their daily adventures on the street. So in a jail, they will pretty much be limited, to make the movie realistic, they'll be kind of limited. Sorry, excuse my voice. So Ice Cube kind of said, he felt like they didn't know what they were talking about, because he said that with the success of shows like Orange is the New Black and shows like, I've never heard of this show, but Let's Go to Prison. But he didn't cite also Kai Cenat did a live stream for a couple of days, I believe, from a correctional facility, and it worked for him. But just to give some pushback on Ice Cube to play both sides, I don't think the show would have been as funny as the main characters being on the street, because, like I said, that film is geared upon them hanging out and them being in the facility. I do agree with the studio in that aspects, but he has put out several scripts that he said he's got, that he got dismissed on, that were turned down. He didn't go into those scripts, but I think one script before, he said something about they was at the dad's funeral who died in real life, and it starts from there. But I don't think he went to any kind of vivid details. But I think, let me go into another reason. He talked about the loss of the characters, which I talked about too. Tony Lister, who played Debo, the villain from the first movie. Tony Lister. So John Witherspoon, who played his father in all three movies. And then also A.J. Johnson, who played the homeless character in the first Friday movie. Those characters passing away. There's been a lot of other characters too, but they were minor characters who passed away. My voice is bad this morning. Who passed away. But, they didn't. But it wasn't geared around them, so it wouldn't affect the movie as much. But we would like to see those characters, or would like to have seen those characters. But it's he got a lot of pushback from the theaters, and it seemed like they just didn't want to put the movie out. And his thing was, with this recent success of correctional movies, give me a chance. And plus, he has a track record of successful movies that he either starred in, produced, directed, things like that. So he felt like he should have been able to been given an opportunity without having to compromise his art. And a lot of times when you have to go through other people who are funding these projects or who have ownership over these projects, you have to compromise your art to what they want it to be. You might come up with the original idea. They might like the idea, but they're like, hey, hey, did you think about putting this character in a dress? Which, so many African American actors are starting to, go against nowadays because it seems like they always want to put, a man in a dress and things like that. Which, like I said, they own the thing, so they're going to put out their own fillers and their own suggestions and their own corrections and their own ways they see things. Even though they don't have the mind, but they do have the funding and they have the ownership, which you can change a lot of things without having creativity, which is kind of sad to see. Erica Badu, Erica Badu kind of talked about this she talked about this on a stand-up poetry set that she did. So she talked about how labels want to make her compromise her art because she was very neo-soul. She was very eclectic, very sensual, and some things might go over people's heads. So sometimes they want you to dumb things down, or they want you to change things to fit to society. But your original goal might not be that. You come in sometimes as a purist and, not thinking about profit. You're thinking about getting your art out there and getting your message. But a lot of times it's all about the profit, and we can understand it's a business, right? But at the same time, if someone has a track record of just being successful, I think you should just give them the benefit of the doubt sometimes and see them, at least put out some fillers out there, film it, send it to some people, get some ideas out there. But just to shoot a script idea down without any research or without any due diligence is a disservice to that artist. And speaking from an ownership perspective, they do it all the time, right? In other genres and things like that. So sports, they do it a lot of times. You'll see like a Patrick Mahomes playing basketball and they'll tell him, oh, we saw you playing basketball. That's nice, but we have a contract. We have a lot of money geared into you. You're our asset. You're our property. You can't play basketball anymore. Or in football or something like that, they'll tell them, hey, you can't go to this certain place at this certain time, which is good advice, but you have to compromise a lot when you don't have ownership and when you don't have control of your situation. And this is a prime example of that. And that's why a lot of people are preaching ownership now, because you don't have to, you set your own rules and you don't have to compromise your art. And that's the most important thing, compromising your art. When you first start off, you can pretty much say how you want, then you have to kind of change it up. For example, like a Cam Newton, whose show he was on, he's with ESPN now. He can't say what he wants to say, opposed to his podcast where he owned and had complete control over. He couldn't be canceled, so to speak. In this culture, they want to cancel, CANCELU, but instead of cancel you, COUNSELU. So a lot of times people just don't know. This comes from inexperience. It comes from just a lack of knowledge. And sometimes we just need to be able to talk to those people and fix that. But I'm getting off on a tangent. But it's all about, like I said, ownership. And Ice Cube coming out with the first original Friday, he put out the idea out there and they profited off of his idea, and now they want him to change his creativity as if he wasn't the original creator. A lot of times, like I said, with these royalties and things like that, it gets very sticky. It gets very sticky as far as you being able to create your own destiny. They control that, even though that you had the idea and you put the money in their pockets. They might have helped you fund it initially, but once you got that funding, they still hold control of it, and you are unable to write your own ticket, so to speak. So good luck to Ice Cube trying to get control of that situation and for him to be able to just succeed and able to continue that series or even make a spinoff, because most of those characters are getting older. So, but tell me what your thoughts about the whole Friday series and having ownership and control of your own situations. So next up, a topic that's similar to the previous topic about compromising your art. But this situation has to do with compromising your art in the form of how you introduce yourself to the game. because we know how you enter the game might not be the same way as you leave the game. And that's very important for most young kids and for people entering new uh, ventures or new avenues to understand. So Freddie Gibbs, who is a rapper, a hip hop artist, he did a performance, or not a performance, he did a live engagement, speaking engagement at the University of California, Berkeley, where he talked to students and he said he regrets his gangster image because it has brung headaches and he's a family man now. Paraphrase. And when he say he's the headaches, he means like the beefs that he had with different rappers, the different fights and different shootouts and things like that. And he said he wished he could rap about other stuff because, he has a son now and he wants to set a better example for his child. So this is a two-part thing. So he's 42 years old now, but this is a two-part thing. So he wants to change, but does the industry will accept him in his change? Because a lot of times these artists come in as one thing and then they try to change, but then they don't get the same reception once they do, right? The most vivid example I can think of is when you think of, well, from my perspective, Kid Cudi. So Kid Cudi came out, he was always talking about getting high and doing things like this and drugs and things like that. When he changed, his music changed and his subject matter changed. So it wasn't the same artist. And he declined after that, you know. But, kudos to him for changing and for him to be able to realize the faults that he had in his life and to get better. But like I said, when you come in that way, you come in a certain way and you change, your subject matter changes. So you lose fans, you lose viewership, you lose revenue ultimately. So if Kid Cudi came in rapping that same way, it might have been different. Maybe he would have never got to that superstardom, but we'll never know because he came in as a different artist. And that's what I think Freddie Gibbs is kind of alluding to. Unless you switch genres, you usually don't get better. Like I say all the time, like a Post Malone or uh, a Jelly Roll or somebody like that, or that you can switch genres like that and being able to get better from a fan viewership perspective. Usually, if you stay in the same genre and change up your subject matter, like if you're always like you're a singer and you're always talking about breakups, but if you switch to just talking about happiness, like you lose viewerships because coming in, people could relate to what you were doing. But when you change that subject matter, it seems like you lose a different passion, or it's something that loses with it. So, this is what he's kind of alluding to. And I thought about uh, Jay-Z as a perfect example as well, because Jay-Z, when he first came out, he's still rapping about the street life, but he used to rap about being harsh to women. He had songs called Girls, 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 Girls. He has songs called Big Pimpin', which he basically talking about, I'll never give my heart to a woman, like this pimp type being cold hearted towards women. But he regretted, I believe, when he won um songwriter of like he won some songwriter award, and he kind of regretted, and it was for Big Pimpin', and he regretted those lyrics because he's a father of daughters now. He's married to Beyonce, and he has a mother himself. So he regretted those lyrics. But rap. Well, I'm trying to say this. When you rap about stuff like that, those songs are already out there. You can't take them back. But the only thing you can do is do better going forward. And he hasn't made a song like that going forward. He was able to, compromise his art, so to speak. But he was actually able to change his mentality. But that was from his own doing, not from the sight of a label company or one of his handlers or things like that. He was able to do that on his own merit, for his own benefit. Like I said, Freddie Gibbs is very good at his craft. He's very good at what he does. And I think he can figure out how to switch it up a little bit to be able to, if he was genuine about not wanting to be a gangster rapper anymore, I think he has the creativity and the ingenuity to be able to figure out other subject matter. And I actually talked about this before with Andre 3000 from Outkast, how he talked about it'll be difficult for him to make a rap album now at his age because he's older and he can't rap about the same things. But I don't think that was true because he always rapped about a myriad of things and even sung about different things. And he has a flute album now, but he's able to be creative and think outside the box. I think he just doesn't want the pressure right now and wants to do it on his own time, which is his right. But as hip hop fans, we do want to see him put out that album and see what it sounds like. But it gave me the question of how can you transition to a different subject matter without, fully compromising yourself? How can you, go from being a gangster rapper to talking about being a parent, or how can you talk about falling in love for the first time, or being in love currently, or just changing it up all the way. T.I. said it on a song called The Weekend on one of his albums, I think the Libra album. He said, trap music don't just have to be about what you do in the streets. It's about when you go on vacation, when you fall in love, when you have your first child. It doesn't have to be one-sided. It could be multifaceted, and you don't have to be one-dimensional. And that's a key concept of anything. Try not to be one-dimensional. In the sports players, like, they don't want somebody that can just shoot. They want a LeBron type. They want you to be able to shoot, dribble, pass, play defense, do these other things, manage a game well, to be able to do these different things and not just being stuck in one box. Just that what makes you great is being able to switch to different things, to being able to give the fans more than one perspective on things, and being able to be a Swiss Army knife, a jack of all trades, so to speak. So I have confidence in Freddie Gibbs being able to figure this out and able to transition to other topics and other subject matter as far as hip hop goes. And he does a little acting on the side too. He's starring in 50 Cent's Power Force show. So he does a little acting on the side too. So he's kind of venturing into different things as he gets older. Like I said, he can't talk about gangster rap forever. So it'll be important for him to find other things to thrive and succeed, and to being able to continue his art. Excuse me. Speaking of being a jack of all trades, being a stewardess of many different things, LL Cool J, one of the hip hop pioneers, he talks about doing an appearance on Apple Music Le Code. He said he's going to humbly say that, and he said he means this. One day he will wake up, one day people will wake up and realize that LL Cool J is the most important rapper that ever existed. So, we got to talk about this one. We got to discuss this and kind of break this down, give context behind it, being able to just give a all-around context for this subject right here. So LL Cool J, he did coin the phrase GOAT, which stands for greatest of all time. And now it's used in every avenue other than hip-hop. It's used in sports. It's used in other genres. It's used in every avenue you can think of, right? Everybody uses that phrase. I don't know if he actually got it trademarked or not, but he should have, because he could have made, tons of money off of it. But he's the first person that was actually known publicly to use the term GOAT, greatest of all time. And he referred that to himself as the greatest of all time. And like I said, as a pioneer, he has right to that. And he has influenced a lot of different artists. But let me give you a little background. So he was Def Jam's their first official artist, like whether it be hip hop, R&B, country, whatever. He was their first official artist. So, and just to give my reasonings for why he has a case for why he's one of the most important. He didn't say best hip hop artist. He said most important. So to play on those words, when you say most important, so when you think of an MVP, most valuable player, it's always broken down in this context. You can't tell the story of that year for an MVP. You can't tell the story of that year without that person, essentially. So when you say he's the most important person in hip hop, can you tell the story of hip hop without LL Cool J? And that answer is a firm no. LL Cool J is one of the most important. It's difficult for me to say the most important because, like I said, I would need more information from every artist and behind the scenes type things, and which I don't have, and we might not never have. But from me on the outside looking in, LL Cool J is one of the most important. He has to be in the top 3 of artists of all time. Just to give a rundown, he started off on the movie Crush Groove, which is a movie about hip hop. He was in the background moving boxes, most noticeably. So he put in work early that had nothing to do with hip hop and was able to become one of the biggest stars. Now, just other than hip hop, when you say the most important person in hip hop, what trends have you set for other artists, and how have you helped other people expand above the genre and above the music to help people be more seen, to bring more light to hip hop? So he has the biggest case for that argument because he transitioned and took risks that most people didn't. So, for example, I Need Love. Hip hop didn't really incorporate love or feelings into hip hop. It was mostly about who's the best rapper. It was about battling. He dropped that album, he dropped the song I Need Love, kind of changed the game. People were able to talk about love and be able to talk about different things other than just battling in hip hop and about your love for the art. You were able to talk about your family and different things like that. LL Cool J kind of set that trend. And he was one of the first artists to do so, if not the first artist to do so. He had a song called I Can't Live Without My Radio. So it was just about his love for things that's in his personal life. He was one of the first people to do that. Then later down the line, you start seeing people rapping about their Adidas, their Nikes, whatever materialistic things they were attracted to or drawn to, so to speak. Also, LL Cool J was one of the first, if not the first artist to transition to acting, to professional acting, not just doing like hip hop movies and things like that. He was on actual movies and TV shows, Deep Blue Sea, Any Given Sunday. He's doing CSI shows, I believe, now on CBS. He's able to transition. He's known more for acting now than he is hip hop because of the younger generation don't remember him as a hip hop artist. But I would inform kids that your favorite hip hop artists have been influenced by LL Cool J and have openly done so. And let me give you a rundown of those artists. You might know a 50 Cent, you might know a Nelly, you might know a Ludacris, Eminem, Fabulous, Cameron, Jay-Z, DMX. These artists have all expressed how LL Cool J influenced them to be an artist, hip hop artist specifically. All of these artists have mimicked him. Now, I think most notably a 50 Cent with the body type that he has paused with. His subject matter is similar to an LL Cool J. Even in one of his shows, the theme song or the promo song for his show, Raising Canaan, was Mama Said Knock You Out. And that's another thing that LL Cool J had. He had catchy songs that brung people who weren't necessarily hip hop fans over to the genre because he had these songs that were pop songs that transcended hip hop. He was one of the first artists to go pop, so to speak, and to switch up and be able to take these risks because back then artists weren't making songs like that as much. It was more gangster rap. It was more street. He brought in the casual hip hop fan, so to speak. So if you weren't from the streets and you were urban, you're from another culture, you heard Mama Said Knock You Out. And then when you heard that, you were like, wow, that's a pretty good song. And then it might bring you over to the genre, similar to what an Eminem did for Lose Yourself. A lot of people I know despise hip hop, but they love Eminem. I mean, I'm not gonna get into the reason why they love Eminem opposed to other hip hop, but that song brung in. It'll be too easy to say that, but he did bring other people in with these pop type hits that actually brung people over to hip hop, whether it be for their own self-serving reasons or not. That's a different story. I'll talk about that later. But he did bring people over for that. LL Cool J, like I said, he goes back all the way to the 80s. He started this thing when there was really no money in hip hop. He did it for the love of the game. And that's another reason, like artists today, it's about the money and about how can you transition to something else. LL Cool J didn't go in the mindset of transitioning to acting. It kind of just fell by his side and he just ran along with it and became very good at it. And like I said, he's a perfectionist and he believed that acting was a challenge for him. So he took that challenge and ran with it. And he's, known as one of the greatest for doing so. But like I said, just to say it all, LL Cool J you can't tell a story of hip hop without LL Cool J. Otherwise, you're doing a disservice to hip hop and to music in general. LL Cool J will go down as the greatest of all time just from, like I said, being a pioneer and just taking risk and taking chances. And to be successful, there's no reward without risk. And he took huge risks, whether it be music or, just transitioning to acting. So to try to transition to my last topic about taking risk and hip hop, Meek Mill responded to the Drake lawsuit. This is a response that most people wanted to see. And of course, it came on X or Twitter or whatever you call it, or what you want to call it, which Meek Mill is very active on Twitter and X. So a fan stated in response to Drake's lawsuit against Universal Music Group, a fan said that it was all fun and games when Drake had everybody dancing on Meek Mill's grave during their battle, but now the tables have turned. He don't like that type of treatment. And Meek Mill responded simply by saying, "But Meek be tripping, you heard?" So that's a very good response to Meek Mill on this matter because, like I covered in my last podcast, Meek Mill was Drake's biggest battle up until the Kendrick battle. And Drake won single-handedly because there wasn't much response from Meek Mill. Meek Mill dropped the song, but I think it didn't get good enough reception, so he took the song down. And I want to say he dropped it on SoundCloud. It wasn't even on the major DSPs or anything like that. So that kind of showed you he didn't want to engage in the battle or didn't think it was profitable. But like I said, I was saying before, he wasn't a formidable foe for Drake. He's more of a street type artist. He's not a battler. Hit maker. He's a rapper at heart, general rapper at heart, and nobody ever accused him of people writing for him as they have Drake. Drake dissed Meek Mill back in 2015. I'm still not sure why. I think it had something to do with Nicki Minaj. Drake used to have lyrics about Nicki Minaj wanting to be with her, and then Meek Mill ended up being with her, and I think they were friends. It was something petty like that. But Drake dissed Meek Mill back in 2015 when he released the songs Charged Up and Back to Back. Now, Back to Back was a song that was nominated for a Grammy, but ironically, it lost to Kendrick Lamar's All Right at the 58 Grammy Awards. So that's the irony of that song, that song. But another thing, Kendrick said, Back to Back, I like that record, but I'll get back to that song later. But I don't think he ever did. I want to know what he meant about that song. It seemed like he was implying that someone wrote that song for Drake. But like I said, he never came back on that. But, in that song Back to Back, Drake did throw shots at Meek Mill, and he threw shots at Nicki Minaj being a more successful person, and him saying, "Is that a world tour or your girls tour?" Things like that. Like I said, Drake has a lot of beef with different hip hop artists and people general over women because he steps his boundaries with women and things like that. He doesn't know how to control himself and just thinks he's very narcissistic in that way, thinking that, every woman misses him or every woman should be with him. He's very narcissistic in that way. But this back to back song was played everywhere. You couldn't escape it. And I know Meek Mill couldn't escape it, but he didn't cry about it. He just went to the studio. And like Kendrick said, he put his head down. He understands that everybody ain't gonna like you. Put your head down and work like I do. And he made the Champions album, which some can argue is his best album up to date. So he was still successful after the beef he had with Drake. And he didn't let it perturb him or deter him. He just kept going and kept working. Unlike Drake now, he's not putting out much music and just crying about the game being rigged when the game was rigged for you for so long. Now that the shoe's on the other foot, it's like the fans kind of said, now the shoe is on the other foot, you want to cry about it and point out the injustices. That's like if I couldn't get into a restaurant, or I could get into a restaurant and then I go to a place and now I can't get into a restaurant. I say, oh, these restaurants are letting certain people in, where you've been for so long, been able to get into that place. And now when other people get into it, now you have a, complaint about it. It's just self-serving. And I hate the self-serving stuff that Drake is putting out. But like I said, the lawsuit will kind of exploit some things, and maybe Drake can exploit himself by the unfair advantages he had when he had problems with people, and he was able to play gatekeeper and keep people away from certain things and certain opportunities. So we'll see as this lawsuit continues. But that's all the episode I have today. I'll post this episode up and give me your thoughts on what you think about everything we discussed today. And like I said before, thanks for the continued support. Continue to like, watch, and subscribe to the content. And until next time, I'll see you next time.